Let's go. Hey, you welcome to the channel for my Premier League predictions. Game week 25. Game week 24 came with some shocking and interesting results. Arsenal beating Manchester City by 5 goals to 1 was nothing but shocking and amazing. But Nottingham Forest beating Brighton by 7 goals to 0 too was a history-making day. Come on, what a performance and what a response for Nottingham Forest after losing 5-0 to AFC Bournemouth in game week 23. I think this was a statement result for Nottingham Forest. Before we get into the game week 25 predictions, let's take a review on the game week 24 games. The first game was between Nottingham Forest versus Brighton, which Nottingham Forest ended up winning by 7 goals to 0 against Brighton at the City ground, and it was a statement results. After losing 5-0 against Bournemouth in game 23, this was a statement being made over there. And kudos to Nottingham Forest. Moving on to the second game too was between AFC Bournemouth versus Liverpool. And I think Mohamed Salah was on top of the game. What a player. So far this season, 21 goals in the Premier League. This is history being making over there. Moving on to the next game was at the Goodison Park, which Everton hosted Leicester City, and at the end of the day, Everton beat Leicester by 4 goals to 0, and I think it's a good result. At this point, Everton is gradually climbing on top of the Premier League table, and I don't think relegation will be a struggle this season, and it's a good result. Moving on to the next game towards between Ipswich Town versus Southampton. And I think Southampton winning 2-0 is another good result for them, even though this season they have been on a terrible run. Before that game, they only had 6 points, so now they have 9 points in the Premier League and against no other than Ipswich Town. Southampton won 2-1 against Ipswich Town in game week 24. Moving on to one shocking game which I personally was mesmerized was at the St. James Park where Newcastle hosted Fulham, and at the end of the day, Fulham beat Newcastle by 2 goals to 1. Which in that game, Newcastle scored the first goal, and Fulham later on did a comeback and won that game by 2 goals to 1. And the next game too was between Wolves versus Aston Villa, and at the end of the day, Wolves beat Aston Villa by 2 goals to 0, which to me it was a shocking performance for Aston Villa. Losing 2-0 against Wolves was unpredictable. Even though football has this unpredictable nature, but at the end of the day, Wolves winning 2-1 against Villa, I don't think Villa did enough to at least even claim a point in that game. And Wolves deserve all the 3 maximum points in that game against Villa in game 24. Brentford sit at home and they lost 2-0 against Tottenham Hotspur, which I think that game Tottenham Hotspur did their possible best and they deserve all the 3 maximum points. Even though I predicted that game to end in a draw, at the end of the day, Tottenham showing that they still got something to at least claim points after a terrible form of run. Now Tottenham got a win against Brentford in game week 24. At the Old Trafford, where Manchester United at home lost 2-0 against Crystal Palace. Going to that game, I predicted a draw. I predicted a 1-1 draw, but at the end of the day, Manchester United were not good enough to at least even claim a point against a Crystal Palace team who was behind them. Crystal Palace Mateta showed that he got it. He scored 2 massive goals to give Crystal Palace all the 3 maximum points at the Old Trafford. United losing in game week 24 was nothing but interesting. Game of the week in game week 24 was between Arsenal versus Manchester City. To me, I think Manchester City this season is shocking. Last week that they beat Chelsea 3 goals to 1, I was shocked how Chelsea were able to allow themselves for this current Manchester City team to beat them by 3 goals to 1. Today, Mikel Arteta and the Arsenal boys showed their caliber. They showed their character. They showed that they still got something in them. Even though they can't win the Premier League, but well, they show Manchester City that they are Arsenal and they are the Gunners. They scored 5 goals to 1 against Manchester City. And what was interesting is that Kai Havertz missed a chance in this game. And I was like, what? How can you miss these chances? But at the end of the day, It doesn't matter. Arsenal won 5 goals to 1. It's left one game yet to play, which is between Chelsea versus West Ham United. Let's get into the game week 25 prediction. So the first game is between Brighton versus Chelsea. Looking clearly on the league table, you can see Chelsea, even though Chelsea have one game to play, they are now sit on the Premier League table with 40 points. If they win their game against West Ham United, they are going to go the fourth position with 43 points. And if they draw two, they will be fifth with 41 points with goals difference. So that's how it goes. But looking at Brighton too on the league table, Brighton is now 10th on the Premier League table with 34 points as it stands in game week 24. In game week 24, Brighton lost 7-0 against Nottingham Forest. Chelsea are here to play the game in game week 24, so I can't give much details about that. But going to this game in game week 25 is going to be an interesting game on Friday. So going to this game, I'm predicting Chelsea to get a 3-1 victory over Brighton. Chelsea 3, Brighton 1. Leicester City also lost 4-0 against Everton. The next game too is at the King Power Stadium. It's between Leicester City versus Arsenal. In game week 24, Arsenal won 5-1 against Manchester City, and Leicester also lost 4-0 against Everton in game week 24. Looking at the league table, Arsenal is now second on the Premier League table with 50 points. Leicester City is now 18th on the league table. Going into this game, do I think Leicester is going to pull a surprise? I don't think so, because looking at the kind of form Leicester is riding on at the moment, and facing Arsenal is going to be a tough opponent for Leicester City, even though they may be playing home. But to me, I think it's going to go in favor of Arsenal. In this game, I'm predicting Arsenal to get a 3-0 victory over Leicester City at the King Power Stadium. Arsenal 3, Leicester City 0. Now, who also in game 24 lost 2-1 against the bottom team Southampton. It's going to be an interesting game at the Villa Park. Do I think Aston Villa is going to drop points against Spurs? Was nothing good to write home about him. Going into this game, who I think this season, Ipswich Town, they has been with the most draws this season. So going into this game at the Villa Park, I'm going for a 1-1 draw. Aston Villa 1, Ipswich Town 1. Moving on to the next game is between Fulham versus Nottingham Forest. Both teams in game week 24, Fulham won Newcastle United by 2 goals to 1, and Nottingham Forest also beat Brighton by 7 goals to 0 in game week 24. Looking at both teams, Fulham versus Nottingham Forest, do I think Fulham is going to pull up a surprise? I don't think so, because before this game, Fulham in their last 2 games, they won one, lost one. They lost against Manchester United, and they won against Newcastle United. So going into this game against Nottingham Forest, which I think this season he has been good. Looking at Nottingham Forest on the league table, going into this game, Fulham versus Nottingham Forest, I'm predicting Nottingham Forest to get a 2-0 victory over Fulham. Nottingham Forest 2, Fulham 0. Yeah, so moving on to the next game too at the Etihad Stadium is between Manchester City versus Newcastle United. Both teams lost their game in game week 24. Manchester City lost 5-1 against Arsenal, and Newcastle United also lost 2-1 against Fulham in game week 24. Looking at the Premier League table, as I'm talking right now, Newcastle is now 5th, Manchester City too is now 4th with 41 points. So going into this game, the one who wins is going to climb on top of the other. So it's going to be an interesting crash at the Etihad Stadium with Manchester City new signings. Even though they are not clicking well as we expect them to, I think this game is going to be an interesting one. And one key player Manchester City should be afraid of is Alexander Isak. This guy too is a top striker. I wonder, still, I don't even understand. He is a striker that Arsenal can afford. Why is Arsenal not going for a player like him, and they still allow Kai Havertz to be their number 9 striker? It's shocking. Well, Manchester City going into this game against Newcastle United at the Etihad in game week 25 is going to be an interesting game, and I'm predicting this game to end in a high-scoring draw. I'm predicting a 2-2 draw. Manchester City 2, Newcastle United 2. Yes, so moving on to the next game at the St. Mary's Stadium is between Southampton versus AFC Bournemouth. Looking at the Premier League table, you can see Bournemouth at the moment they are 8th on the Premier League table. And Southampton is at the bottom 20th on the Premier League table. This shows you that Southampton going to this game in game week 25, they can't get anything than to lose against AFC Bournemouth. Bournemouth 2 in game week 24, they lost 2-0 to Liverpool, who is the league leader, so it's quite acceptable. Even though Southampton won 2-1 against Ipswich Town in game week 24, I don't think they are going to surprise us in game 25 against AFC Bournemouth. And going into this game, I'm predicting Bournemouth to get a 3-1 victory over Southampton. Bournemouth 3, Southampton 1. Yes, and moving on to the London Stadium is between West Ham United versus Brentford. As I'm recording this video, West Ham United are yet to play their game in game 24, which is against Chelsea. And Brentford already played a game. They lost 2-0 against Tottenham Hotspur in game 24. Looking at both teams going into this game at the London Stadium, game 25 is going to be nothing but interesting clash. Going into this game, I'm predicting West Ham United to at least get a win over Brentford. I'm predicting West Ham United to get a 2-1 victory over Brentford. West Ham United 2, Brentford 1. Yes, so moving on to the next game at the Selhurst Park is between Crystal Palace versus Everton. Crystal Palace in game week 24 shocked Manchester United by beating them at their own backyard 2-0 against Manchester United in game week 24. And Everton also got a 4-0 victory in game week 24. Both teams going into this game in game week 25 are coming with a victory, but while looking at it at Selhurst Park, Crystal Palace hosting Everton is going to be an interesting encounter, and I'm not expecting this game to go in favor of any other. But well, I'm predicting this game to end in a draw. I'm going for a 1-1 draw. Crystal Palace 1, Everton 1. Yes, so moving on to the next game is between Liverpool versus Wolves. Liverpool in game 24 got a 2-0 victory over AFC Bournemouth, and Wolves also got a 2-0 victory over Aston Villa in game 24. Looking at both teams leading the Premier League table with 56 points, and they still have one outstanding game before these games will be played. They have already played a game against Everton, so it could be more than 6 points gap difference between Arsenal and Liverpool. And if they lose against Everton, it means it's still going to remain 6 point gap difference between Arsenal and Liverpool. And well, going to this game against Wolves, who is 17th on the Premier League table, I think the game looking for any shocker over here. I'm going a straight win for Liverpool. I'm predicting Liverpool to get a 5-1 victory over Wolves. Liverpool 5, Wolves 1. Yes, so moving on to the game of the week, which is the last game in game week 25 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, is between Tottenham Hotspur versus Manchester United. Manchester United in game week 24 lost 2-0 against Crystal Palace, and Tottenham Hotspur also got a 2-0 victory over Brentford in game 24. Looking at both teams on the Premier League table, Manchester United is now 13th with 29 points, and Tottenham Hotspur is 14th with 27 points as it stands in game 24. Going into this game in game 25 is nothing but an interesting game. Since Manchester United lost in game 24, I don't think they are going to lose in this game against Tottenham Hotspur. And Spurs, before their game against Brentford, which they got a 2-0 victory, they have been on a terrible run. And going to this game, I'm going for a draw game. I'm predicting Tottenham Hotspur 2, Manchester United 2. Yeah, so these are my predictions for Premier League game week 25. My name is Andy Fire and my like target for this video is just 50 likes. Like, comment your thoughts and your predictions at the comment section. Without wasting much of your time, till we meet in another video. Bye bye for now.